here with y'all today.
Thank you for being here.
So tell us how you ended up in Dripping Springs.
Well, I was wrapping up my Army career. It was 2017. I was finishing up my time at the White House. I was there 3.5 years. It was a pretty cool assignment.
Yeah.
And
Wait. What'd you do? What was your assignment?
so I worked for the President of the United States doing logistics at the White House for 3.5 years.
Well,
as an Army major.
How exciting! I worked for the president of Dripping Springs, a leak, so it's kind of the same thing.
It is. I'd say so. I would now put Dripping Springs above that in my tenure of things I've got to do.
So this was the Biden? No.
End of Obama.
End of
and then I got
Obama.
the first about 8 to 12 months under Trump's tenure. Yeah.
So how was that?
It was an adventure.
Yeah.
I like to say Trump wore me out. When he got elected and got in there, there were not much of an administration. I think it was kind of like, we always kind of like, did they think they were going to win? Because they don't have anybody here. And so really the White House Military Office was instrumental in kind of the transition and ensuring that none of the balls dropped and everything was kind of going. And so, but he also wanted to make a lot of changes. And so doing the logistics for that inside the White House and the renovations that came and all those types of things, I was heavily involved in that process. And so that was a lot of fun. Let me tell you, I'll tell you this quick story about the attention to detail, whether you like him or don't like him, that the president has. One of the things that I was responsible for was all the flags in the West Wing and in the White House. And so the presidential flag, the American flag, the vice president, and all the Army branches, all this type of things. And so when President Trump got elected, he wanted the Oval Office to kind of mirror his commander-in-chief role, right? President's got three roles: commander-in-chief, head of state, and chief executive, right? Yeah. But his commander-in-chief role, he wanted that to be, again, my understanding was he wanted that to be his part in the Oval Office. And so one day, he was coming out of a meeting and going into the Oval Office and told his staff, grab all these flags and take them in my office. And so literally they did that. I got a call from one of the staff members there saying, Rob, I don't know what happened, but the Oval looks very different than it did about 2 hours ago, and I don't know if this is right. We probably should fix this. And so I came down there and met with the military aide at the time, a great guy, and we found a way to turn what the president wanted into what it is. Actually, believe it or not, today, as he just started his second term, the decisions we made back in his first term are actually now in place again today. Except they knew this time what they were doing. We had to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
So it was cool. So things like that happened at the beginning of Trump's term, his first term, just because it was a lot of change.
Yeah.
A lot of change. Kept me busy.
He seems like he was a lot more prepared coming into office for this one than he did the first.
Yeah, think about it.
There's a lot more, again, my understanding, I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
But certainly not the first term. And
do you have friends that are still there? Do you have anybody you're in
Yeah.
It's like constant turnover.
It may be people that are in politics and things like that that are getting appointed to different things and so on and so forth. So a little bit different than being a blocker and tackler, which is what I was as an Army officer. Apolitical, nonpartisan, just doing what's right for whoever the president is.
Yeah.
It was a privilege to serve there for the time I did. I loved it.
What a great thing to be able to do in your career.
We were just talking about, I was mentioning presidential dogs.
Yeah,
And we were saying that Trump is the first president in 100 years to not have an animal in the White House. And then we were talking about Barack Obama's dogs. What was Sonny and
Bo
and Sonny and Bo.
I saw them all the time.
There you go.
They're actually great dogs.
Were they?
They were really cool.
They were pretty dogs.
We also talked about Biden's dogs were biting everybody, so you're lucky you weren't there during that.
His dogs weren't around when I was there. He
Yeah.
was the vice president, and so I knew a lot of people, the vice president's detail and the vice president's aides and things like that, and they didn't get bit. So that was a newer thing when he became president.
I bet you never knew that's where this conversation was going to go.
So that
it's
was
interesting nonetheless for your listeners.
Yes, it is. So that would you say that was 2017?
I would have. Yeah. So I got there in 14.
Okay.
Or late 13 and went all the way through 17.
Did you retire from the Army when you came out?
My wife and I had a little come to Jesus. I was 12 years in. I was a major.
Okay.
And it was a lot of deployments, and just the kids are getting older, and we just thought we're very spiritual. We love the Lord, and so we said we were praying heavily, and what's our future have for us? And this leads in now to your question. Let's get to it, Steve. And so we just said, you know what? I think it's time to go do something else, which was a hard decision because I've committed to 12 years, a couple deployments. My career was really going well in the Army. But we just felt it was time for something different and to focus more on family than it was my military career, which would have been very invasive on my time.
Yeah.
And so I partnered with a hiring firm that's actually based out of Fredericksburg, and I interviewed with companies all over the country. Long story short in that, got this opportunity with a startup in the Austin area. My wife's a native Austinite. So this was kind of
okay.
Yeah.
There's the tie.
There's a tie. I grew up in South Texas. My wife's a native Austinite, and but as we had the opportunity, I said, "Darling, I'm not a city guy. I'm more of a outside the city guy." And she goes, "Nope, no problem. I got the perfect place." I said, "Well, let's go check it out." And that was Dripping Springs, Texas.
Where'd you grow up in South Texas?
Edinburgh, Texas.
I'm from Westlaco, Texas.
Come on, let's go Valley.
Hey, all right.
Let's go Valley.
That's right.
I went from lived there from when I was 4 all the way till I went to Texas A&M.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I graduated of Edinburgh North High School, class of 2000.
So I grew up, well, like partly in Westlaco, and then I went to Corpus. But my family's all from down there.
I enjoy the Valley. The food is amazing.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing like Valley Mexican
Absolutely.
food, for
The schools
sure.
in Edinburgh, Texas, where I grew up, are actually really good. I had a great public education. This will kind of lead into, we talk about the school board stuff here in a little bit, but had a great, I was raised very, very well down there, and we really loved it. And so when we were looking to a place to leave Washington, D.C. from, which is where we were.
Well, the Valley was not on your top list.
No,
probably wasn't
it
that.
wasn't. My family's long since gone and all those types of things. And so Dripping Springs, we came to visit, went down to Mercer and kind of almost down where we are now here talking, and man, we just fell in love with the place. And so we moved here, moved into a place in Belterra because I needed kind of proximity to Austin.
Sure.
At the time, I wish I would have moved out way west of town, just because.
Hey, I know a real estate agent.
I know. Yeah, but now I could have got it cheap. Now you can't.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we love it here in Dripping Springs. My wife and I are heavily involved in all kinds of things, everything from community service to coaching sports to church and all the things. And then I was crazy enough to run for school board, and we'll get to that here eventually.
Yeah, we will. When you went to A&M, did you go ROTC?
I was in the Corps Cadets.
Okay.
I was. A couple buddies that graduated before I did were in there, and they brought me up to visit them when they were, I was like, "Oh, this is the coolest thing ever! Look at these uniforms and all this stuff." And I'll tell this story real quick if I could, Steve.
Yeah.
So I'll go join the Corps Cadets, join the Aggie Band, which is amazing. Love that.
Wow.
Trombone player, absolutely.
Wow.
Was bugle rank my senior year, which was a lot of fun. Anyways, so didn't plan to go in the military or any of that type of stuff. And then my sophomore year, as we all remember, 2001, 9/11 happens. And I was a sophomore cadet. I was an Army ROTC, and I just felt the Lord pull my heart to say it's time to go do something. And so 6 months later, I had a contract to be a commissioned officer in the United States Army.
Jeez, wow.
So I'm one of the many, many, many men and women who raised their right hand shortly after 9/11 and said, "I'm going to go fight for this country and do whatever I can for it." So,
Why did you choose the Army branch?
I'll be honest with you. I tried to be a pilot. I realized that I cannot deal with motion sickness.
Oh, jeez.
So,
well, that'll
they put me in a thing,
hinder you.
And I Rob. I think you scored the lowest out of anybody who's ever done this.
You shouldn't even drive a bus.
We haven't even started yet, and you threw up.
That's right. If you're even in a small car, you're screwed, buddy. So, long story short, the Army was a great opportunity for me in that. They gave me a scholarship to help finish out my time at A&M, which I spent 6 years at A&M, but that's okay. I graduated with I joke about this. I graduated with a PhD in the Dixie Chicken.
That's a bar in
That's a bar,
College Station.
I did, yeah. So that's all right. You hold that against me. It is what it is. But that's how I wound up getting in the Army.
Okay.
And which eventually brought us to Dripping Springs in 17.
So the journey now from moving here and then deciding to run for the school board. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
What made you want to do that?
So, Steve, I talked about my background. And I have 2 kids here in the public school system in Dripping Springs. And I had some good friends of mine that in 2022 or 2021, 2022 decided to run for school board and were elected. And I got to know them. We all go to church together, this kind of stuff. And about a couple years later, I guess we're in 2023 now. They kind of called me and said, "Hey, Rob, it's your turn." So,
oh, jeez.
My turn for what? And they said, "Your turn to come join this adventure." All right. There was a school board member rolling off, and an opportunity was coming up, and they said, "You should consider it." And I said, "I did. No, thank you." Right?
I thought about it and no.
I thought about
It's
it.
a thankless job sometimes.
But as we've talked about before, I'm a very spiritual man, and I just felt the Lord say, "Man, yes, you have these gifts. Use them for your town. Use them for your community." And so I said, okay. And so I said, "All right, Lord, if you want me to do this, affirm this, would you please? That'd be great." Kind of wrestling a little bit. And the affirmation from many in our community was astounding, which I was humbled by, completely humbled by. I'm not a guy who likes to think I'm anything more than just a servant and a public servant and a government servant and a servant of the Lord. And so when that happened, I said, let's give this all we got. And so 2023, I was elected to the school board that now I have the opportunity to invest time and make absolutely zero money. Giving to this
that
community.
sounds like my job.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people know that, man. They're like, "Rob, how much time do you put in a week?" It's about 20 hours. Like,
Yeah.
And you get nothing? I said, that's not true. I get a lot.
Yeah.
But nothing monetary.
Yeah.
I get a lot from this opportunity that the community has given me.
It's just all about giving.
It's all about giving.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the one thing that really surprised you? We've had a lot of I guess accidental politicians on our show before. And what was the one thing that really surprised you about running for school board that you didn't think that would, like, you're like, okay, I want to serve my community, and now you're a politician?
Yeah, great question. I don't know if anything really surprised me, being a guy who's been in D.C., inside the Beltway,
Yeah.
around Capitol Hill a lot. I kind of had an understanding of what it is when you throw your name into something and you have, values and stances that you're not going to necessarily compromise on. That opens up opportunities for ridicule and those types of things.
Sure.
And some of that happened when I ran. I'm open about my faith. I'm open about my values. And so the decisions I make are going to align with those things. Mm-hmm. And so there's people who don't respect that and appreciate that, and that's okay. That's part of it. And I would say, though, what would actually surprise me wasn't a negative thing. It was a positive thing. I was amazed at how many people were like, Rob, we think you're great. We should do this. Huh. I don't view myself that way.
Yeah.
I've always just been the grunt making things happen.
Making things happen. Well, that's probably why they said you should do it.
Probably, Steve.
Yeah,
and
that's
so,
always the way it is. Do you consider yourself a politician now?
No, I'm not a politician. I'm a servant. I'm a servant.
Yeah,
that's how I view.
But you got to have a little bit of politician in you to run.
I'm a good public speaker.
Yeah,
I know what I know. I'm pretty sharp. God's given me gifts, and I'm just using those.
He can talk the shell off a turtle.
The gift of gab is how I like to do it, Michelle. I have the gift of gab.
Is that what they say down in the valley there?
Yeah, it's a valley thing. You talk the husk off the tamale is what it is down there. I think the biggest thing, or the thing that I have heard more often than not, was the impact that it had on their families too. It's
sure.
like, your children and your children.
When you're running for an office,
Your children are more in the public eye, and there's more eyes on them too, and then your spouse as well. I know that we've talked many times to Peggy Hippolito, and bless her heart,
I know her well. Yes,
the things that people would do.
Yeah.
It was crazy to me.
Have you had some really nasty things said about you that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Let me pull him up right now.
Yeah, pull him up right now.
And I'll answer kind of the thing about the family deal, Michelle. I'll just throw that in there. This is how awesome my family is. So when I was deliberating this, and I made the decision that night, and I told my wife and my kids went upstairs. They were now 3 years younger than they are now. I got a high schooler now and a fifth grader. And they literally went upstairs and made campaign signs and brought them down to me.
Okay.
Aww.
There's an affirmation.
Is there not anything better than that, right? And so believe it or not, my campaigning has been very positive. I'm a positive guy generally. Yeah. I like to look for the very best in things. Sure, there's been things I'm like, are you kidding me? But most of it has been extremely positive. Right? I think that's a reflection of our community. Our community is a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. And the people here are generally really awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Texas is still Texas in Dripping Springs. And I value that, and I want to continue to embody that in any position I get a chance to have here in this community.
Yeah, I think this town still has a better sense of community than a lot of towns do.
I would agree with that 100%.
We're all a lot tighter than a lot of other places.
Yep.
So school boards, tell us why school boards are important. And what's the history of school boards?
Yeah, so they're important because it's all about local control.
Yeah.
The responsibility to educate children resides with the states. The state of Texas takes the responsibility to fund those things and handle a lot of that. But when it comes down to the true nuts and bolts of how a school district is going to operate, where it's going to build a school and how it's going to build a school and who's going to build a school and how they're going to run their budget, all of that, what curriculum they're going to use.
So you guys decide curriculum
Absolutely. The State Board of Education approves curriculum.
Okay.
But locally, we have the authority to decide on the curriculum we feel best fits our kids. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to education in the state of Texas, and there certainly isn't at the federal level.
Yeah.
And so local school boards are critical and essential in the oversight of the school district. And kind of remember, one thing I want to point out is, the ones who oversight the district are community members that are elected by the community. And so the community all has a voice in everything that happens within our school district, right? And then, of course, the superintendent works for the school board, all 7 of us, so she's got a really tough job.
Yeah.
Which, let me give her a plug right now. I think our superintendent is phenomenal. She works really, really hard,
Yeah.
harder than most people that I know, and so I'm really impressed with her and a lot of the work that she's been doing in our community since she got here about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Coming after COVID, which we all know that how difficult that was, right? But there's a lot of things that's changed since that time as well. So, yeah.
Right, but so that's, I like the local approach. The federal thing, and I'm kind of go off on a tangent and then we'll come back to our school board. Do you think there's a possibility that the Department of Ed might go away?
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Not in total.
No, because the president doesn't have that authority.
Yeah.
Right. It's a congressional mandate, and I don't see any pathway of that getting through the Senate or and with the filibuster in place. And so I don't see that going away. And so to be honest though, it doesn't have a lot of impact.
Really?
It doesn't. No. I mean, outside of Title IX, that federal statute has the most amount of impact on our district. Outside of that, we get some funds and things like that for child nutrition and some specific populations and things like that. But when it comes from a budgetary perspective, it's a very, very small amount of money for our district. And so all of our money comes from local property taxes.
Local property tax. I'm glad you said that because I think that is. A lot of people don't understand that. They think you guys are getting half your money from the federal government.
No, sir.
So,
not at all. I think it's 1% maybe.
Is it really that little?
It's such a small number.
But then they do have some control over what you guys teach, right? I mean, no, they
That's
don't.
all from the state of Texas.
Interesting.
All from the
Look
state
at
of
that.
Texas.
I'm learning all kinds of new stuff.
Look at
We
that.
should start a podcast.
Hey. Oh wait, I forget to hit record.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Look at Steve.
People are going to be confused.
I know,
What is happening in this podcast?
Yeah.
So I have a question that is kind of been plaguing me, and you may or may not know the answer
Sure.
to this, but explain to me, like a third grader, why are school property taxes still mandated and still applied to our seniors, our senior population?
Yeah, this is a good
I've
one.
never understood.
And let me
this.
caveat this, because anytime I go places, I talk, as a school board trustee, I'm going to bring all my personal opinions in now for a lot of the stuff we're talking about. So just for the record, let it reflect that Rob's talking his personal opinions on all this stuff. So property taxes are difficult, right, as it relates to, they are truly, for the most part, how schools get funded. Now, the state of Texas and the legislature has a lot to do with this, and that's something what's called the student allotment. The student allotment is the allocation of how much a school district gets to keep of their local property tax collections, or how much money the state will give on top of local property tax collections to fully fund a school district.
The Robin Hood.
That's a little bit different,
Okay.
Michelle. I'll get to Robin Hood.
Okay.
And I'm going to really confuse the heck out of all of your listeners. But just know that your trustee, my colleagues and I get this stuff. So $6,160 is that amount, right? So Dripping Springs, we collect property taxes based on the tax rate that we've established. There's two sides of that tax rate. There's interest and sinking, which is for debt and bonds, bond capacity, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And then we have maintenance and operations, M&O. Now, over the last 6 years, the property taxes for Dripping Springs ISD here in our community has decreased. 2 years ago, we passed the single largest property tax decrease for the school district at 18 cents in over 15 years. And we did that because we understand the challenges our taxpayers are dealing with as it relates to increasing property values. So even though our property tax is decreasing as it relates to Dripping Springs ISD over the last 6 years, property values are increasing and it's not offsetting. So for most people, that's resulted in an increase in property tax. I'm one of those people. I paid the highest amount last year than I've ever have before.
Yeah,
now
same.
let's talk to 65 folks that are older, which I have a great sensitivity to because this community was built on the backs of those people.
Yes.
I have a ton of respect for them. If you are 65 and older and you have not frozen your property taxes, please, please, please go do that. At 65, once you reach that threshold and you get that exemption now on your property taxes, any additional taxes associated with the school district will not apply to you. And if I'm pretty sure about this, again, don't hold me to this, I'm almost positive about this, if we would decrease the tax rate, you will still get that benefit as well.
That's my understanding too.
And so I'm almost positive about that. So the biggest thing our seniors can do, folks 65 and older, whether you own a ranch or you own a small home here in Dripping Springs or et cetera, get those taxes frozen. But keep in mind, what I'm trying to do, again, Rob McClelland's personal opinion, I'm trying to do everything I can to get the state to increase the student allotment. That's going to solve our budget crisis. That will continue to allow property taxes to decrease. And there's one thing on the ballot, the legislature is considering right now. It's called SB 4. It's another increase to the homestead exemption of $40,000. What that'll do is it will decrease the M&O property tax that would be collected by the district, and we'd be able to return some additional, we would likely, be able to return some additional tax relief to the residents by way of our current tax rate. So the legislature's trying to buy down M&O by putting more money in public education at the state level, and that then all works down to our local taxpayer here in Dripping Springs.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice. So we want them to pass SB4 for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about school bonds. Yeah, somebody's blowing up my phone. Let me put it on silent
The
here.
school bonds that are coming forth in April that we're going to vote on for our new high school and improvements. My understanding is that the school bonds do not pay for teacher salaries or anything else.
Michelle, you're correct.
Okay, so there has been some misinformation out there on social media that these school bonds are going to be $400 million, I think is what they were saying.
We have two propositions. We have Proposition A is $399.7 million, and I'll get into the details of that in a second, and Proposition B is $2.6 million.
Okay.
And the reason we have two propositions is the state of Texas requires us, if we're going to do certain things, like technology purchases, which in this case is going to be computers and smart screens and all these kind of things, has to be a separate proposition on the ballot.
That's not me.
You buzzing again? I'm not
That's
buzzing.
not me.
No.
I don't know what's going on.
happening.
They're
Wow,
buzzing all
everybody's
over.
calling.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
That's okay. And so yes, $399.7 million is going to pay primarily for the big one, which is the high school number 2.
Okay.
Let's talk about that first, if we could.
Yeah, because what if the bond? Like I want to deep dive into that.
Yep.
But and one of the questions I had is, if this bond doesn't pass and we desperately need this high school, what happens?
Well,
so
my colleagues and I, let's just answer that question bluntly. My colleagues and I got to go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
This will be the second time this proposition is on the ballot. Now, here's what's different from last time. The voters, again, this is all before I got on the school board. The voters approved to spend money to design the second high school. That is done almost in entirety. We had a meeting this past week where we approved the design development for that project. And so the community is going to see over the next couple of months what high school number 2 is going to look like. We know where we're going to build it. We know how many square feet we're going to have. We have basically a shovel-ready project that we're taking to the community. And an important piece of that is a lot of times when you put a proposition on the ballot, you're kind of guessing what the cost is going to be. In this particular case, we've designed a building. We've spec'd it all out. We've worked very, very hard behind the scenes to get the cost down to the lowest amount we feel we possibly can, which, by the way, is still a lot of money. The project cost in this high school is about $250 million. That's a lot of money. But let me put that in perspective for all your listeners and for y'all. We're doing the single largest non-residential development in the history of Dripping Springs. Let's let that sit in for a second.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, I mean, residential communities, obviously, they build hundreds, in some cases like Belcher, thousands of homes,
Sure.
right? It's larger per square mile,
Yeah.
but this is the single largest development project in our history. We literally have to build our own wastewater facility for this deal because the city can't get to us out there. We're on Darden Hill and Sawyer Ranch. We're building a baseball field, softball fields. We are going to ensure that whatever's available currently for Dripping Springs Tiger, 9th through 12th, is available for a Dripping Springs or whatever it is, other side of town school to be named later. They're going to have the same opportunities. That's the biggest thing about this for I want our community to get is we are trying to create an opportunity for no matter if you live in the east or north or south or west part of town, the kids are going to get the same opportunities. Varsity football, varsity baseball, band, orchestra, performing arts, ag barn, you name it, we're going to do it. And so to accommodate that and to meet that request, it's a lot of money.
The argument that I've heard for it is I've heard a lot of argument against it. Obviously, it's just money in the bonds. But the argument I've heard for it is if you're wanting your child to participate in the band, the football, the wrestling, the theater arts or whatever, is that right now they are so overcrowded that they don't have enough space for all of these kids to participate in these. And some of these kids are eating lunch at 10 a.m. because there's so many people.
Well, I think that comes down to when people hear school bonds is up or is a proposition? It's
a school bond, yes.
Yeah.
School bond is up for election. What they hear is a tax increase. They say, they're going to raise our taxes. Is that true? And if not, what would you like them to hear instead?
This is obviously a huge, important topic. And here's the deal. We actually did a kind of a poll on this, and no matter what I'm about to say here, half of you are not going to believe me. And I understand that. But let me just tell you, forget Rob's opinion of exactly the implications on this. My colleagues and I, with this bond passing, a lot of it has to do with bond capacity. Currently, our interest and sinking rate, we're allowed to tax up to 50% for every $100. That's what the state of Texas allows us to do. We're at 35 cents for every $100. So we're 15 cents lower per 100 than we're allowed to go under the statute. So I want to set that clear first and foremost, right? Secondly, when you have on that particular rate at 35 cents per 100, you have a bond capacity based on your growth forecast and the people who live here. And for us, that's about $500 million. This bond proposition is going to come in at about $400 million, not about 402 point whatever it is, $million, which leaves us $100 million of additional capacity. Again, these are rough estimates of additional capacity at the current tax rate. What that means is the current tax rate is not expected to increase. But when you take on debt, and again, I want to be clear about this, especially all my conservative brothers and sisters out there, when you take on debt, of course, you have to pay more taxes to get rid of the debt. Right now, here in Dripping Springs, we pay off debt early. This year alone, we're going to pay off over $20 million of debt early. All right, so we don't plan to amortize this bond package over 30 years and pay up to $700 million total, including the interest,
yeah.
Right? We don't anticipate or planning to do that. So let me just go back and circle back. We do not anticipate increasing your tax rate for this bond proposition. That is not the plan. That's not what we anticipate doing. At the same time, though, you take on debt. You have to have more. So what that means is I can't lower the tax rate because we've taken on the debt. So that's the answer. Half y'all aren't going to understand that or believe me about that.
You know what, Rob?
That's the answer.
That is probably the clearest explanation for that I have ever heard.
Well, I appreciate that.
Because a lot of times we'll go, as realtors, we'll go to these presentations, and it just feels like they're kind of not saying certain words, and it's like it won't take any more money out of my pocket, and we could have this great facility here in town. Now, I understand, yes, we won't see any property tax decrease, but sometimes you got to live with that.
That's right. And I'm going to opine here for 1 second, because again, I talked about SB 4 before, right? If SB 4 passes, the homestead exemption goes up. Again, I'm opining here, everybody.
Yeah,
so
sure.
M&O comes down, INS stays the same. Guess what that equals at the end of the day? Tax rate will decrease.
Yeah.
Right? Now, again, we need help from the legislature. Dripping Springs on our own, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? We don't control those levers, right? The only one we control really the most is the interest in sinking. And again, our plan, at least for the short term, is to keep that exactly where it is.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talking about the legislature talking about vouchers.
Oh, I have a whole.
Got a whole thing.
Thing
yeah.
about vouchers.
Yeah, you're talking about SB2 and HB3 now. Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of argument. I used to be for them, and then I was reading more about them, and now I'm just 100% against them.
Oh, really? So, Rob, what's your take on vouchers?
All right.
Rob's opinion.
Rob's personal opinion here, not a standard.
Sure.
Obviously, as a board, we have a legislative advocacy deal that we've put together, and that's available for the public to look at where we are. Again, we're focused very much on the increase in the student allotment, right, which solves a lot of our public education funding challenges, right? Now, let's look at these things are called a lot of things: vouchers, ESAs, school choice. No one can really decide on a name. Here's the reality. I'll be honest with you, Michelle. I'm not for or against. Here's what I am for. I'm for what's best for parents and for kids.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, and that, I'm not taking a softball to get out of the question. I'm what's best for that. Now, for my family, that's public school, and so that's why I'm sitting here as a school board member, giving everything I possibly can for public school. Here in Dripping Springs, 95% of our kids, roughly, go to our school system. We just did a poll where 82% of our community feels very or somewhat confident in the school district. That's 82%. Let's call it approval rating. That's phenomenal. It was 75% 2 years ago, which means our community is very supportive of our public school system. That should be the model for what we do, right? If a parent has a circumstance and they want another educational opportunity for their kid, God bless them. Should they have to take out a second mortgage to do that? I think that's a question worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Right? That's a hard position to be in. And but also a lot of those parents, they have kids that have some needs.
Yeah.
Right? And there's not enough schools for kids with those needs, and maybe this provides more opportunity for that. And so at the end of the day, let's take all the buzzwords out of it, all the emotions out of it, whatever it is. Parents are in charge of their kids' education, number one. I believe that. And number two, parents should have the right to do what's best for their kids.
Where do you think parents should go to find out, true unbiased information about these school vouchers?
I don't know if you will, Michelle.
Yeah, there's so much misinformation.
It's too much noise. I call it noise. It's very noisy about this. You have a lot of variables. Obviously, I look and I just go into the legislation. That's where I look. So I know there's a bill the House has, HB3, and there's a bill the Senate has, HB2, and there's some differences. The good news is both of those, there's going to be separate bills that subsequent that is putting billions of dollars back in public education. And so that's good for what we're trying to do here at Dripping Springs. Right now, there's about $1 billion that they're going to do for MOTH, and that would probably help 10,000 kids, right?
The thing for me is it's not an issue in Dripping Springs because we have exceptional schools. Some of these schools on the east side of Austin, though, their kids graduating from those schools, they can't read and do basic math. If I lived in one of those communities, I'd want the option to send my kid to a different school.
One of the arguments that I've heard in regards to the school vouchers instead of the school vouchers is that, yes, if you are sending your child to private school, well, then you should be able to write a portion or that $10,000 off of your own property taxes or whatever, however it was working, or not property taxes, income taxes. And so I was like, well, that's an interesting argument. Now, granted, all my kids are graduated and done. But
and your kids graduated from a great school district.
Yeah, they all graduated. This is why we moved out here to Dripping Springs, because we were in South Austin. We were in the best school district in Austin. My kids were going to Baranoff Bailey Bowie, so
that's where my wife went.
Yeah, they were all that feeder, and I still was like, I had a dyslexic kid, and I was like, I think he needs a little, smaller class sizes and needs a little bit more attention. Well, I want to jump over to a question that I've kind of had, and I've seen a lot of social media chitter chatter about kind of social media influence.
Okay.
Gosh, our kids are just so bombarded with this. But what I have seen is I want to know Rob's opinion, and I love the fact that you're coming from a point of your opinion. And I got to read my question because I want to make sure I get it correct. Sitting on school board, I want to know what your opinion is about sitting school board members commenting on social media sites about either school business or staff. I have seen it happening, and I find it yucky. I find it really yucky. I love the fact that you are sitting here with us and you're saying, this is my opinion only, but I'm seeing school board members going out there and presenting themselves, and they're not saying this is my opinion. And so the way it's presented to me is this is a DSISD opinion, and because there's private pages out there that there's chitter chatter, and somebody's complaining about a teacher, and they're chiming in. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is an HR issue. This always happens behind closed doors, and now you're publicly commenting.
Have you seen anything like that?
Well, if you're looking for the social media guru, I am not it. I hate to disappoint you. To be honest, just personally, I loathe it. Is there goodness that comes from it? Absolutely.
But as far as like ethics and your code of conduct that you guys need to adhere to as far as school board members?
Pretty much anything that any school board member would say on social media is going to be their opinion. Anything we do together, we do as a body corporate, right?
Sure.
So that's in our meetings, all those types of things. The school board trustee on their individual doesn't have any power. The power comes from the body
group.
corporate, the group of us, right? So if I were to go on and opine about something, which you won't find me doing, that's going to be my opinion. Right, and so and school board trustees, they very much have a right to their opinion, just like I'm here sharing it with you all here on the airs. And so you're probably just seeing that. People have different ways in which they engage with the community. That is a good way to engage in the community, to show that there's a listening ear. And so I don't know specifically what you might be talking about, but that may be what's happening.
I haven't seen specific examples of this. Michelle has told me about some, but I think it's where they get. They don't realize that people are watching the words that they say, and they don't maybe think them all the way through before they write them down.
Well, and that's hard. That's the hard thing about getting into a position of like we're in is and you have to learn this over time, is what you say as an individual is one thing, but once you get into a position like this, it's like a shout.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Well, that's a great way to put it. That's exactly
right.
It's
like a shout, and it's this, and so I've actually had to.
It's gospel now.
Right. I've had to be careful as I've gotten into this deal. I've been a leader in many other organizations, but never an elected leader before, and so I'm learning that, like some other people. So hopefully, there's no one today that takes anything I say and takes it as the gospel. It's truly here we're just talking and sharing some opinions. But here's what I will say, and I'm going to brag on my colleagues for a little minute. My colleagues are very, very sharp people. We all come from very diverse backgrounds, from high school principals to real estate agents to construction people to psychiatrists. And we have a very good team of people on this board right now. And I'm thankful for every single one of my colleagues. The amount of time, we're all at everything. You won't ever not see us engaged in things. We're all at every meeting, even though I say that as I missed the last one because I was traveling. Sorry about that. Community.
Liar.
That's right. We have some good people on this board.
Yeah.
They have my trust and my confidence, and I think we're gaining that in the community. We're really trying. We're working with other elected leaders here across our community, everybody from Sheriff Ippolito, who's a great friend of mine,
Yes.
to the mayor, the city council, to the commissioners court, to our state representatives, and even our congressmen, who I know well. That wasn't the case. My understanding is that was not the case before.
No, we've been here, both, I guess Steve and I collectively.
20 plus years.
Yeah, over 20 years. We saw
collectively,
well,
like,
gosh, 40
almost
years.
40 years,
But,
yeah.
I hope you're seeing a difference in
Yeah.
what we're trying to bring to the
Yeah.
table, right? We're truly, 5 of us are parents of our kids that are in the district. So we have skin in the game,
Yeah.
so to speak, in what we're doing. And we're all trying to do right by our kids and right by our families before anything else.
How many trustees are there right now?
There are 7.
7.
There are
okay.
7, yeah.
What are the biggest issues that the school board, but also just DSISD in general, are facing right now?
The growth, Steve.
The growth.
The growth. You've seen it. You lived here for 20 years, both of you, 40 years combined, like you just said. Now, there's some good news in this. Because of the infrastructure challenges here in Dripping Springs area, the growth has been stunted a little bit. We exploded after the COVID migration.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody
Yeah.
moved here. We got way behind.
Yeah.
We are now, we will be, in the elementary and secondary and middle school education, starting next year, under-enrolled in the sense of our capacity for schools is greater than the amount of kids that we project over the next 3 years. That's a huge win. That's why we had to go through the rezoning things. And for
Yeah.
those who didn't get what they wanted, I apologize. It was only a few of you, community
You can't
members.
make everybody happy
We
all
tried.
the time. Yeah,
We
I know you
tried.
did.
We
I know you
tried.
did, but you can never do it.
And so that's great news for us. Again, the biggest challenge right now is the high school. And we're at a crossroads, Drip. We have 2 ways to go, in my humble opinion. We go to high school number 2 and we approve this project, and we move to high school number 2 and we have 2 2,500 seat high schools for the next however many years we can keep that, or we build a big high school.
So one
Right.
of the questions that I have is...
Let me piggyback
okay.
on that. How many kids do we have in high school right
Oh,
now?
gosh.
25, 50.
Yeah, a lot.
All
Yeah,
right.
25.
Go ahead. Sorry,
so
Michelle.
we're dropping 4 portables this summer
Okay.
for the high school. They're going to go out just over there by the band practice facility, and then we'll have to drop 4 more probably the following summer to get us through to when we would open up high school number 2, assuming the voters join in with us on
Approve
that.
it, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
We're very lucky that we have an amazing school district, and that just, it's testament to why people keep moving here.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to know is, what is the process for a parent grievance? So,
Yeah.
and I feel
Ooh, that's
like
a good
a lot
question.
of people feel like, oh, I'm going to go to my school board member. And I love when you said that we operate as a group.
That's right.
We operate as a team. So like somebody coming to you with a grievance, there is obviously a protocol that they need to follow.
It's called
and
the
who they-
trail of resolution is what
Okay.
we like to call it.
Explain that.
Yeah, so the first thing, when something happens at your local campus, that's where you want to solve the deal. Let me tell you, we have great principals. I know each and every single one of them. They are solid, and they care a lot about our kids, and they care a lot about their relationships with the parents at their schools. And I say that with sincerity. Hopefully you've experienced the same thing as your kids
Yeah.
were getting raised here. That's where the problem most of the time can get solved. All right, well, let's just say, though, for some circumstances, we don't get very many of these, but that doesn't happen, right? Well, you do have the option under our board policy, to file a grievance that would ultimately wind up in the school board on appeal if that is not resolved. We get a couple of those a year, and those are difficult. So, all right, so let's go through that. Can't work something out. You have a right in the board policy to do that. First, there's 3 tiers. You'll have the local campus will look at it. So say maybe the grievance was with the teacher. The principal will look at it and they'll issue a ruling. If you want to appeal that, it goes then to the superintendent's office. And that could be held by a deputy superintendent would hear that, or maybe safety security. It just depends on the specific issue that needs to be resolved. That would be 2. And then you could appeal ultimately to the school board. And then all 7 of our colleagues would hear it in either an opened or a closed session, depending on the circumstances of the
Who
grievance.
decides if it's open or closed? The board or the...
It's the circumstances.
It's
I
the
believe,
circumstance.
right?
Yeah, our policy basically drives what it is.
Okay.
If it involves a personal matter,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
we try to
Close.
close that, right? Because we again, but our policy drives that.
Sure,
We don't
okay.
get to. There's not a lot of judgment in that. It's either black or it's white.
Okay.
But here's to your point, Michelle. I think it's good. Like I do get some calls sometimes, and like, hey Rob, this is up. I said, hold on real quick. Don't get too deep, because ultimately, if you do, and it comes to me, I can't do anything, right? Because now I have to abstain because I'm no longer objective, right? Objectivity in decision making, and I hope everybody out there appreciates that we care about this. We want to be objective in making decisions in any situation.
That lends
right?
back to my point, though, about the social media and the opinions based on grievances. I think that I'm seeing online. Now, granted, I'm just a stalker, right? I don't have a dog in this fight. Because
but she occasionally is the dog in the fight. There, Rob.
but not in this.
Michelle, you have a right to say whatever you want.
But I'm watching these conversations that kind of go forth, and you put it's a great example in the sense that they're putting their opinion on, Mrs. Smith brought candy to school and hyped my kids all up, and then somebody chimes in on that, and then if it keeps getting escalated, now that school board member essentially has to abstain themselves.
That would be a choice.
Because
yeah.
I guess if somebody said, they said this on social media, I mean, I'm just trying to...
It would depend on the circumstance, of course. And we have a very good board attorney that helps us navigate those things if and when the case. I had to abstain one time on a vote because I had a previous relationship with a general contractor we were looking to hire, right? And I did that in my private industry, but I have a relationship with these guys. So I said, nope, you six are going to vote, and I'm just going to sit over here and not vote because I know those guys, right? So there are certain deals.
Point.
By the way, I didn't have to do that. I chose to do that because objectivity...
It makes it hard, though, when you've got 6, because you can be split.
Optics
There's
also, right?
It's really public trust. As an elected official in any capacity, whether it's here locally or it's at the state level, whatever it is, you want to have the public's trust.
Yes.
Right? And you want to do things that embody the public's trust, not violates it. And so those are just the values I talked about not compromising on. Me personally, I'm not going to compromise on that, right?
Yeah. So in your term on the school board, have you had to deal with any of the hotbed issues that are sort of culturally front and center, like boys and girl sports and bathrooms, or any of that kind of stuff? Have you had to deal?
Yes.
Has any been that been brought up?
Yes. We're fortunate here in the state of Texas. On some of those issues, we have state law that is settled it.
Okay.
We have state law that's settled critical race theory. We've got state law that has separated, biological sex when it comes to sports. Right.
Okay.
Now we have a Title IX refinement that's further codified it. That basically settled a lot of those things.
Yeah.
There was this situation last election cycle actually where we were reviewing some policies and there were some local people that kind of stirred some things up.
Are you talking about when the gentleman stripped down to his...
No, that was during COVID. This was since and anyway. So sometimes people get very emotional about things we're considering, and a lot of times that's actually because. And I don't like to, Michelle, you talk about some misinformation. I call it noise again. A lot of noise gets generated based upon conjecture. And that can sometimes come to a head in a meeting, and it can get very difficult for us because we're sitting there going, "Are you kidding me? This is nowhere near what we're doing."
Well, it's the pitchforks, people, and they rile each other up on social media, and it's misinformation. When I'm seeing a lot of the bond stuff being, when I said the $400 million, I meant to say the $400 million for the high school, not the total package. And so somebody came out and said, this high school is going to be $400 million, and somebody came through and said, no, this is what it's going to be. And I read through that. I'm like, okay.
And we cut tens of millions of dollars out of that project over the course of the design to try to get that to. Our goal was to get below $250 million, but we got as close as we could to that. And even then, that sounds like a crazy amount of money, right? Yeah. It's a lot of money, but I encourage everybody out there who's a little skeptic on that. I want you to please go research high schools in Central Texas that have been built over the last 3 years, and go find me one cheaper.
Yeah, is that right?
They're not out there. I mean, we have a sister Central Texas district that's putting another high school in the bond at this very same time. It's a lot more than ours, right? So we have worked hard to come up with what we think is the best solution for Dripping Springs, and that is a quality facility to meet the growing needs of our kids that provides every opportunity that they can to do auto shop, welding, high school football, baseball, orchestra, you name it, in a place that they could do that's closer to the home. And that's what we want to do to meet the growing demand.
Yeah.
So,
don't you think, though, the biggest question out there right now about whether or not this bond passes or school vouchers or whatever is, will they still be tight?
That's a good one. I don't know the answer to that question. That's going to be a community conversation.
Maybe the Lions.
Rob is not going to make that call, right? My colleagues and I are not going to do that in a vacuum. As you can see, almost everything we've done. We looked at zoning. We put a zoning committee together of the citizens of the community. It wasn't just the 7 of us figuring out what this is all going to do and drawing lines.
You need to get buy-in from people.
We did. We did. We went through and we had a committee. When we named the new elementary school, Wildwood Springs, we had a committee put together. Now, we went a little bit off the recommendation, but it was one of the top 3 that they put together, right? Only because there were some variables around the middle school potentially being there and having the Sycamore effect, right? Where Sycamore Middle, Sycamore Elementary. We thought Wildwood would be better for middle school. So, again, there were some variables there that we looked at. But we want a community-driven process. We want the Steve and Michelles that have lived here a long time in our community.
Steve and Michelle High School.
That's it. That's the only thing we can't do. You can't
Mallet and
name our
Michelle.
schools after a person.
I want to circle back to the sort of cultural issues. You started to talk about that you had some things come and people will come and speak to you, but you don't have any say in those things, but you still have to sit there and listen.
We
Is
do.
that right?
So we can only, under the law, under the Open Meetings Act, under the law, we can only, as a body corporate, converse in our board meetings on things on the agenda. On this particular time, none of the things were on the agenda, and so it was an hour and a half of just, we're the worst human beings on the earth. And it was...
That's got to be hard.
It was hard. I'm not a guy, you hear me, I'm talking a lot, right? Not being able to defend any position or your values or any of those types of things was a very difficult process.
Wait. So the person can speak.
They can sign up to speak,
They can
right?
sign up to speak.
They get
and
3 minutes.
But they can say whatever, or if it's person after person, they can say whatever they want.
Whatever you want. Come speak at our board meetings if you want to. If you got something on your hand.
But you can't respond.
Because it's not
on the agenda. That's
It's not on the agenda.
Interesting.
How many
I didn't know
people
that.
can speak? Does that go on as long as
There are people you can sign
They
up before, you sign up
filibuster.
online.
Wow.
But again, if we're going to be the community is responsible for overseeing and governing and putting everything in the school. That's a good process, right? And so we want to hear from folks. What gets troubling is, you have agitators that stir things, and something is brought to a head that never needed to get to that point. That can be frustrating in the position we're in, because we're sitting up there look like a bunch of mutes.
Yeah.
Right? And the law, though, that we're following the law,
Yeah.
the law prevents us from engaging in that stuff, and that's very difficult for me. I'm not good at that. So honestly,
yeah, and I've seen some social media posts where they make it look like the school board just isn't even paying attention. But because they're not responding, it looks like they're just.
it looks like we don't care.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And just so you know, I feel that, and I hear that. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
My colleagues and I, we care a lot about this job.
Yeah.
And we care a lot about our kids, and we care a lot about this town. And so when those things happen, trust me, it matters.
Is there, before those public comments are read, is there some statement that, hey, you're welcome to come speak for your 3 minutes, the school board can't respond?
Yeah, our board president reads that, yes, sir.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
sir. Yeah, but again, it's kind of like procedural.
Right.
And
Nobody
so,
really listens.
No,
It's sort of
really
like,
listens.
blah, 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 yeah.
They pour their heart out, and it's like,
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
And it feels very transactional.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I don't know what as soon as the law changes, we're not going to do that locally because we're not authorized to do that. But that's not what I want.
Yeah.
I would love to have all right, and again, it's only really in school boards that's the case. There's even at the city council, you can have some, whatever it is. It's really us that are kind of in a position where we can't.
Have people followed you out to your car after a very kind of heated?
We got someone to take care of that if that ever happens.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's good.
Because
safety is, people get heated especially when they're talking about their children, right?
There's a little bit of a mob mentality that goes
You're
on
right.
at some of those
It
things
does,
too.
yep.
People get really hyped up,
It does.
and people kind of push them on to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
But to us, it all matters. What our community says, even segments of it, whatever it is, to us, it all matters.
I bet you have been sitting there sometimes when somebody said something and you went, wow, I never thought of that.
Oh, it happens.
Yeah, I bet
we
it
have some
does.
very engaged, smart people in our
Yeah.
community, and actually, sometimes people will bring us things going, well, we're going to figure out that.
Yeah.
Right? Because we again, we talk about caring is truly investing and making sure things are right. And so now we encourage us not to do that. I just talked about the trail of resolution and the grievance process. You don't want to air your stuff out in public, right? Because that can have a lot of second, third order effects,
Sure.
right? So I would encourage, but again, it is your right as a citizen, as a parent in this community, to do that at any
Well,
time
not
you
even
feel
as a
you're public.
parent, as a tax-paying member of this community,
exactly
even if you
right.
don't have children in the district anymore, I still care. I'm a human. I care about what's going on, and I understand. Even though I asked the question, I understand the need for people over 65 somewhat to pay their fair share because you're wanting good, productive members of society within your community. I get all that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to pay it.
I hear you. Michelle, I hear you on that, but I do appreciate your acknowledgement that everybody wins when Dripping Springs ISD is successful in this community, right? But now let's put the realtor hat on. Why is this community growing, right? Right.
Our property values are higher than just about any other place except for a couple communities in Austin, just because of the school, for the sole fact of the school.
And eventually that will pay off, right?
Yeah.
For this over 65, when it's time to liquidate and it's time to go wherever it is you're going to go.
If you've owned your house out here for 20 years, you're going to make a lot of money.
It's going to pay off.
It's not. Not every school is a good fit for every child. And so I learned that in South Austin when my kid was going to go to Bailey. It was like, I had to make that decision. Okay, well, we uprooted our family from South Austin and moved out here to Podunk Dripping Springs, and there was nothing out here. It was Super Sucks and Dairy Queen.
You weren't here when HEB was here when you moved here.
It was here, and Belterra Village was just getting ready to get going. It was like 2 years out, and they said, there's going to be all this stuff here. I'm like, yeah, right, okay, I believe it when I see it. Next thing you know, I'm like, Chick-fil-A's coming?
Yeah.
Holy smokes, this just got better over here.
When we moved here, the grocery store was Super S, which was like a glorified 7-Eleven. That was, that was rough.
We've talked about it several times. We should go find, Steve, like the original owners or manager
Super S,
of Super S and say, what's the deal with the expired meat? What was it?
What was the deal with that?
Was that a business plan that you guys
The green meat,
For sure.
Rob, you're very plugged into the community. You're coaching basketball.
I coach a baseball team. Yep.
Baseball, that's what it is. I'm sorry. And you get kids in school and your wife here, and you said you're a very strong Christian man. What is it that makes you want to give back to the community? What drives that?
I'm trying to sum that up because there's so much for me, right? I want to say I view my opportunity to be here as a privilege.
Just on the earth or in Dripping Springs?
Really here in this community, right? Yes, on the earth too. I mean, going to combat, there's some close calls, right? So I view every opportunity as, and I got another chance at a lot of stuff, right? So I'm trying to raise my kids right and be a good father and be a good loving husband and glorify God in what I do and all those types of things. And so, but when I nestled here, I'm like, man, this place is really awesome. And I started to get to know a lot of the other dads that were all involved in sports. And then I got involved in the church, and Dripping is a cool place.
It is.
It's not perfect. No, you won't find any utopian society on this earth, right? God promises that to us. That all awaits us in heaven someday. But this is a really cool place. And, when we got a lot of people moving here and coming in here, I see a lot of assimilation to that, to those values and to things we care about. And I get to see them all in, whether it's at Founders or it's on the baseball field or at football Friday nights. This is small town, hometown Texas.
Yeah, it is.
And it's everything I've ever wanted to have in my life.
And raise your children.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's why I view this as a privilege, because this is awesome.
Yeah.
Right? And so to answer your question, then, Steve, to get to play any small part in leading it and trying to do what's best for it and to listen to the people here and make an impact, I relish the opportunity.
Yeah. It is I often think about that. Of all the thousands and thousands of little towns and cities in this country, how did I end up at such a cool place?
I know.
You never know what life brings you.
It is pretty cool.
I even have signs that say, leave Steve Mellon.
I keep coming back.
I don't even know why. To piggyback on that, if your time in the school board ended tomorrow, what's the one thing you would want people to remember about your service here?
To be honest, them remembering anything about me, I feel it's tertiary. It's not primary. I want them to have the absolute best school they could possibly have. Would be what I want them to remember. I want them to remember in 10 years or 1 year, whatever it is. I got to go for re-election next year. That that place is better than it was before. Right, and
you left it better than you found it.
That's it. And Rob will have nothing. No, my name will not matter in that, and I'm cool with that. The fact that it is the case, and by the way, let's double click on this for a second. When a community grows like we're growing, it can lose itself.
Yes, without a doubt,
it can lose itself.
We talked about that,
and that's not what I want.
I think it kind of has over not this past year, but I think during the COVID years, we were having an identity crisis here in Dripping Springs, and I think we've kind of swung back, and we are.
I almost think it's a little stronger now than it was pre-COVID. Yeah,
I believe so.
Better sense of community.
Well, and then we're doing the right things, in my opinion. Right, we're moving in the right way, and so if we can say that when I'm done with this, and that's reflected in the educational opportunities we have for our kids, that's reflected in the way we interact as a community around our school system. I want them to remember that.
Well, that's part of your legacy. And
Yeah.
well, I have a couple of really quick rapid fire questions.
Here you go, Rob.
Okay, and I'm going to mess up the one you told me about earlier.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. What's the most dad thing that you do to embarrass your kids?
Oh, dad jokes. Absolutely. My daughter, now she's a high school freshman, right?
Oh, so they're easily embarrassed.
all the time. I do all, and I lay it on thick. Absolutely. Dad jokes all the time, anywhere.
Perfect. Okay. If you had to switch jobs with any DSISD staff member for just a day, who would it be and why?
Oh, I would probably do the lunchroom deal.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would just mess with the kids.
Lunch,
yeah.
baby.
They're like, can I have some chips? Green beans.
Yeah.
Get out of here. I would.
You'd have to learn the Adam Sandler's Sloppy Joe song.
That's it.
Remember that?
Sloppy Joe. Sloppy Joe. And by the way, our nutrition
Cafeteria
team,
staff,
oh my
yeah.
gosh, they are so awesome.
Yeah, they are.
They work so hard, and they do so many things back there for our kids every day.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of meals. So
Yeah.
sorry, I don't want to take
No,
away from
that's
fire.
that's
That would
great.
be
I would
fun. I'm
totally
with you.
work the lunchroom and
It
make
would
it
be
happen.
fun.
What is a hidden talent that no one knows about?
This is the one I don't even. I mean, I'm an open book, so I'm like, who doesn't know about?
Well, you played the trombone.
I did.
Oh,
That's pretty wild. Pretty
Yeah.
widely known. I mean, I got good balance. I mean, I don't know. Like,
There you go. That'll
There you
work.
go.
I guess that's what we're gonna have to go with. I
You can
just.
stand
So,
on
can
one
you
foot.
finish off the episode here by standing on
No,
one
we're
leg,
gonna do
please?
it.
I do some jumping jacks. I mean, I can. I was on a snowmobile the last couple days, so I didn't wreck into anything.
Oh, well, there
so
you go, yeah.
I'm going to attribute that to my hidden talent.
That is proven.
I've great balance. That's what I'll be known for.
Okay.
Great balance. My last question is, what is harder, a school board meeting with a room full of angry parents or a dugout full of baseball kids eating sunflower seeds off of the floor?
Oh wow. I'm gonna go baseball. I'm very competitive. So all my kids in there eating sunflowers off that one might send me up a wall. That might send me up a wall. I'm joking, of course. Our kids are awesome, and I love coaching them. It's a privilege to do that, but. Yeah, I don't want them distracted like that. I actually have no food in the dugout policy with my kids.
Ooh, he's hardcore.
We get in between games. We only play for an hour and a half, so you can't wait an hour and a half to have a
Yeah.
snack because it's all about distraction, right?
Steve would not survive. He would not
No,
survive.
no, I wouldn't.
Steve cannot survive an hour and a half without a snack.
I'd be sneaking
You'd
in
be
a
sneaking in
Mars
the
bar or
nachos?
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nachos. Yeah.
That's me. I'm the nacho person.
Yeah. Well, Rob, this has been great. I've known a lot of school board trustees, and there's been a lot that have come before you. You're the first one we've had on the show, but you taught me a lot about what you guys do. I appreciate you spending the time with us
And
here
being
today.
so open with everything. And we really appreciate that.
You're
And
very
just
welcome.
kind of walking us through the process. And we'd love to have you back sometime.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime. Love to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. Very good.
We do all right?
You did great, man.